Speaking of the proper channels, and now we will get to, I've got an update on the movie that I'm starring in shortly that's about to escape or be released. The Queen of the Ring, we talked in the week since we've talked about it, the world premiere on Tuesday, February 25th in Louisville, Kentucky is sold out, and they have added a second showing. I believe that's how they phrase it, or a second, and not an airing, so it must be a showing. They're at the same theater, AMC Stony Brook, here in Louisville, Kentucky, and you can go to the Queen of the Ring movie site, and I'm still trying to find out a little bit more information on details of any potential festivities going on, but we will get that out as quickly as possible. But had to put the movie so nice they're going to have to show it twice. And right here in the place that it was conceived in, that it was like in the product, as Stewie Griffin would say, of a drunken backseat grope fest. It was conceived right here in Louisville, Kentucky, and now it will be releasing generally on March the 7th, but there's some premieres beforehand, and we are going to pick up with, we had wanted to get this out earlier this past week, part 2 of the talk that we had with the director, the screenwriter, he's in the movie, Ash Avildsen. And Brian, unless there's anything technically I need to know, can we just go to part 2 of that discussion within the just the whim of my asking for it?
I don't know if I should make a noise after you request the whim. I don't know if that itself is the setup. If it is, that was the whim. If not, let's go now to a whimsical conversation.
The biggest star in the movie, when I was telling Brian about this, fuck all the girls, and no, he wasn't interested in anybody except Martin Kove, the star of his all-time favorite movie, The Karate Kid.
It's a favorite, not my all-time favorite, but go overboard. Keep going.
You said it was the seminal moment of your childhood, or when your childhood was inseminated, or something that you said like that.
I still think it's ridiculous that here we are all these years later, you still haven't watched The Karate Kid. So I don't even think you're in a position where you should be commenting on said Karate Kid or any of the Cobra Kai's terrorizing him. But yeah, Martin Kove. I don't know what.
But yes, Martin Kove has revolutionized the concept of Al Haft as we knew it. Martin Kove is Al Haft. That's why he was calling me Sam for Sam Muchnick. He's a method actor. Martin was for somebody of my generation, he was the oldest person in the cast, so I could fucking identify. We could actually speak to each other. The kids were off playing with their phones, but you have a mixture of active pro wrestlers, some that I never even saw. They were shooting at different times than I was on the set, but active pro wrestlers, and then actresses and actors playing pro wrestlers, and they seem to kind of meld pretty seamlessly. All the acting talent seemed to be into telling this story and not rolling their eyes because it was the wrestling business.
Yeah, no, all the professional actors, if you will, they were all so great. And I think some of them were pro wrestling fans. Others hadn't really ever spent any time prior to researching for the film in the world of pro wrestling. But I think it's just a testament to how much this story transcends, any real sport. It's just a fascinating, true tale of this woman and her son and this really crazy world and the journey that they go on to try and defy the odds and achieve, what they have in their hearts. Not to be cliche, but I mean, that's kind of, what we all want to do at some point when we're growing up. And then eventually, for a lot of people, the world just beats you into submission and you give up and you say, fuck it, I'm just going to do this. But for Mildred, that was never an option. She just said, I don't care what I have to do. I don't care if it's illegal. I don't care if I have to deal with someone like Billy Wolf, which I tell people, the elevator pitch of this is like, Mildred was like the Tina Turner of pro wrestling. This is it's the magic of what's love got to do with it. I don't want to spoil anything in the second and third acts, but you guys will see what I mean by that. You know, the elevator pitch, because people in Hollywood always like comps. And I'm like, I hate comparing one, you know, piece of art to the next, but fine. Elevator pitch is it's What's Love Got to Do with It meets A League of Their Own with a true story, Rocky, third act. And she really was the Tina Turner of wrestling. But it just shows you like what people are willing to do to get to where they want to go, you know, for lack of a more poetic term for it.
You guys had to soften Billy Wolf up a little bit, or you would have gotten an X rating. If anything, it's still a impactful story, but that's the thing. Billy Wolf even stood out in the wrestling business of the time as a really just fucking disreputable son of a bitch.
Well, yeah, you know, it's interesting with the book. So anyone who has any interest in this story, if you see the movie or not, I highly recommend the book. The book has so much drama. We end the movie, you know, when there's still 100 plus more pages to go in the book. But the book, there's a much harder R version of this movie, the sex, muscles, and diamonds of it all. There's more abuse, there's more sex, there's more vulgarity. I intentionally made the PG-13 version of Mildred's story because I felt that the most important and timeless and memorable parts of her story does not need to be R-rated. And I remember as a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of great PG-13 films that you could go see with relatives, parents, friends that could appeal to someone older and younger without being like, oh, here I am watching this PG movie with the kiddo, or, oh, like this is a crazy R movie. This is going to be awkward because my nephew's 14 or whatever. I wanted to make the PG-13 version of Queen of the Ring because I believe that the story and the characters and all the most important beats all land, but that it can hopefully, you know, get more great PG-13 stories in wide theaters, especially as an independent film. I mean, even just now, you know, we constantly look at what the other movies are that are going into the theaters around us because there's only so many screens throughout the country, right? So for independent films, a lot of the game is luck of the draw of how other movies are performing, whether they're overperforming or underperforming, you know, the few weeks leading up to our release. And there's very few PG-13 films that are out, especially on the indie side. There's going to be Captain America, which comes out a few weeks before us, and then Woody Harrelson's film Last Breath about the true story diving accident the week prior. But with the exception of those two PG-13 films that are wide, there's not much else out there. There's a limited release coming from A24 that looks really great called On Becoming a Guinea Fowl, that's PG-13, but there's just not a lot. So I purposely toned Billy down, one, for the story, and also because it can be very challenging, especially if you're not a big director with a big studio behind you, to get actors that are very established who want to play really dark characters. In fact, going back to What's Love Got to Do with It, because I did a lot of research on how they made that movie when I was researching for Queen, supposedly Lawrence Fishburne passed on the role of Ike Turner many times, multiple times, at least 2 or 3 times, because the guy was such a monster. He didn't want to play him because, you know, men have a really understandably hard time being, oh yeah, I want to be like a womanizer and someone that physically and sexually abused a woman on camera. He passed multiple times until Angela Bassett signed on to play Tina, and then they went back to him and he says, okay, if she's playing Tina, I'll do the picture. And then I believe he ended up getting nominated for his performance, and it's a great movie. If anyone out there hasn't seen What's Love Got to Do with It, highly recommend. But
you softened Jack Pfeffer up a little bit too. He did not have bad breath, and he never once offered. He never once offered me a pickle either.
Yeah. So Jack, you know, and look, we take other creative liberties. Like we have him promoting in Louisville in the story as well as New Jersey and New York because, you know, we combine Chris Jordan and Al Haft into one promoter. We had to take these because there's just too many characters and it becomes too confusing for the audience. And you only have so many minutes.
I'm about 3 or 4 different people at various points. I've mentioned to the listeners, I'm a a representative of the Athletic Commission or I'm a representative of the National Wrestling Alliance, because you can't, again, introduce a cast of thousands to come in and say one line. Who's that guy? At least there's some thread of this. You got two out.
Exactly. And we didn't make Jack Pfeffer Polish. When I casted Walton, who was so great to work with, we casted him very close to when we were starting the film. And he was just like, look, I know he's got a Polish accent. We start shooting very soon. I don't know if we're really going to have time to get into this. He goes, how important is that? I go, it's not, it's about the dialogue and the character and the performance, not like if he has an Eastern European accent or a Western accent or an Asian accent. It's really just about the nice thing about taking creative liberties with a story.
You should have at least made him you should have at least made him wear a suit that hadn't been washed in a month and not take a shower for a week or two. just for method acting.
Yeah. The nice thing about this story not being so well known is that it's easier to get away with just taking creative liberties, because it's not like you're making, the Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan biopic where everyone's like, that's not that. Everyone knows these super famous people. But with Mildred and Jack Pfeffer and Billy Wolf and all these people, like there's very few videos out there, even if any of them. But I did learn from Jeff Lee.
You could have done a worldwide casting search around the globe and found nobody walking today that looks like Jack Pfeffer. It doesn't exist.
Did you know that in Notre Dame, they have a whole Jack Pfeffer wrestling collection exhibit? I guess he had compiled every piece, document, photo, ad, everything. And the author of the book told me about this, and maybe we take a road trip to Indiana. But apparently there's this.
I've been wanting to see that for years. If you'll pay for everything, I'll go with you.
All right, so here's the deal. If we do over $1 million at the box office opening weekend, we will take a road trip. The three of us, plus I have a Lincoln Navigator. The three of us plus 3 fans that show that they bought a ticket opening weekend, and I'm completely improvising here. 3 fans using over $1 million at the box get to do the road trip, and I'm committing for the 2 of you. You can't say no.
I was with you until you brought other people along.
Yeah. Well, we still get to vet them. There's still going to be security checks, okay? We still get to pick them. But yes, there you go. You can win a road trip with the legends themselves, the 2 of you, and I'll drive. I'll be the driver. The Notre Dame Jack Pfeffer.
Where's the premiere in Jersey? Is it in Teterboro?
We don't have a Jersey one. We have a New York one, which is going to be.
Well, then Brian won't go. Brian won't go unless you premiere in Teterboro. He's funny about the New Jersey-New York border.
Jim is obsessed with Teterboro for reasons that myself and the listeners have never quite figured out. And
it's
I'm
like
definitely
Wartburg.
not going into Manhattan anytime soon. I'll say that.
It's like Wartburg. I just like pronouncing the name, but no, we should reiterate the world premieres for Queen of the Ring, February 25th at AMC Stony Brook here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we'll have news on who might be the guests and all the festivities coming up on the podcast over the next few weeks. 26th in Chicago, 27th in Nashville, March 4th and 5th in New York and Los Angeles, and then all the regular people get it on March the 7th across the country. I'm excited. I've never been seen that many places all at the same time before as this movie will. You're opening up a whole new world for me, Ash.
Well, hopefully March 7th, 8th, 9th, all the people that religiously listen to your wonderful show here will be engaging. And, again, part of what we're telling people is be part of the conversation early, right? It's such as people that love the world of pro wrestling. When I read the book, it's just this whole other dimension that I just didn't know about. And one of the things that I'd love to pick your brain on this, from my research, men's wrestling prior to Gorgeous George was not very imaginative when it came to just the theater of it all. And obviously Jack Pfeffer, really leaned in to the theater of it all. But it seems like the women's wrestling in Mildred's era leaned into the theatrics more than the men, because they were so no one knew if it was scripted or not scripted. But, before Gorgeous George, like, the gimmicks and the characters were not, they just weren't as flamboyant or polarizing or extravagant as they became with the women and with Gorgeous George. Does that, what's your perspective on all that?
Part of it was with the women, naturally, when you were trying to make female stars in that era, you wanted to publicize, well, she wears diamonds like the movie stars do, Lana Turner, whatever. She wears diamonds, she wears minks and furs. You could go farther with a woman's wardrobe at that point to glamour them up rather than the guys, because and truthfully, Jack Pfeffer was somewhat behind Buddy Rogers' transformation into the Nature Boy with the bleached blonde hair and the robes and the capes that he wore. He was the Atomic Blonde before he was the Nature Boy. They were looking to color him up, and that type of colorful activity with the men's side of wrestling had been there at some point. Gorgeous George stole stuff from a guy named Lord Lansdowne. There was the germ of it, but television is what really brought it out, because now they're competing with everybody in show business, and there's got to be more color involved. It was almost like in the 30s, you didn't want, the heel may have gotten away with wearing some outlandish colors or whatever, but the babyface, Jim Londos, he was a man of the people. So there wasn't that element of exaggeration until the TV and the dawn of the modern entertainment age.
Right.
But the women could get away with it, and that's the thing people expected to see. That was part of, as you well know, and as they talk about in the movie, that was part of Mildred's selling point, is see her diamonds, see her muscles, see her mink coats. And they dressed her up in evening gowns for publicity pictures. And at the same time, she had those biceps that looked like, baked potatoes. So it was, something that caught on.
Yeah. And back then, this is talked about in the opening of the story, like, now, there's the whole thing, like the terminology muscle mommy, and people really being into women that are very fit and have muscular definition to their bodies. And it's very in vogue today. But back then it was one or the other. It was like, muscles weren't allowed in pretty girls. That was not something that was socially acceptable, or at least openly coveted by men. It wasn't considered sexy or attractive. Now it's much different. Our society loves and embraces women that are very physically fit and have muscular definition, and I'm a huge fan of it myself. But Mildred, from my research, at least in pop culture, there were bodybuilders that she was influenced by, which you'll see some pictures of when she's flexing in the mirror in her bedroom. And there's some moments of that in the trailer. But she was, to my research, one of the first, if not the first, woman that really brought the juxtaposition of, beauty and feminine hair, makeup, and wardrobe combined with muscular definition. And that was another thing that I just got enchanted by. I'm like, wow, so she was the one that put it on the map. It's so in the zeitgeist today. And I have no idea who Mildred Burke was until Jim Ross told me. So it's just, these are all things that, look, anytime an independent film gets made, especially a period one, it's nothing short of a fucking miracle. Like, it's so hard. You literally have to just will it into existence and not, take no for an answer every which way you go to try and raise the money, get the cast, the locations, the crew, everything. But I just, Mildred Burke, regardless of what happens, 50s onward, the fact that her story was so forgotten and untold, it's one of the things that made me pissed off. Not specifically at the WWE, but just like in general. Like, how does something like this just get forgotten about? And why is Moolah as a kid growing up. Why was that shoved down our throats when here, the truth is this, guys, Moolah, and I get into arguments with people because they see the trailer and they just assume it's Moolah, or they go, where's Moolah's movie? Moolah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, Moolah never fucking drew money like Mildred did. She was not a headliner. When they finally got rid of the band in 1972 in Madison Square Garden, Moolah wrestled. No one cared. She wasn't a fucking draw. So to me, I'm like, why was she the one that Vince made every which way? And then the Wendy Richter screw job, which, I always thought the Montreal screw job was the only one that was televised, but the Wendy Richter one, I feel like that set women's wrestling back in the zeitgeist 20 plus years, because Wendy, with the help of Cyndi Lauper and MTV and WrestleMania, she was right there. She was crossing over into the 80s Wonder Woman. Like, she was like right there. And then that whole screw job happened and she was gone. And all of a sudden Moolah was the only woman anyone was seeing wrestling. I go, why? Like, Wendy was right there. She would have been the gateway drug. She was like, that whole thing just tragic.
Now, wait a minute. I don't know whether Wendy would appreciate being called a gateway drug, but
Wendy Richter got me hooked on cocaine.
Hey, come on now. That was your own lack of willpower.
For the record, I mean gateway drug in the sense that the people to fall in love with women's wrestling. No, you know what I mean? Like,
we know what you meant. Wendy is not ecstasy. But
it's a very PC era in society.
And of course, as all of our longtime listeners know, because we've talked about it, but a lot of the story that you're talking about doesn't mention, that Mildred Burke was the first, major female athlete in combat sports in this country and probably in the world. And along with Babe Dietrichson, she was the highest paid female athlete in sports of any kind. And
that's right.
So she set records. They were main event attraction, she and the rest of that crew. But after Billy Wolf was Billy Wolf and the split and everything went down, when the promoters didn't want to, the NWA, none of them wanted to go through shit like that again. And they knew that Moolah, and that's when she was married to Buddy Lee, who was not only involved in the wrestling business, but country music promotion. Buddy Lee was probably a more famous name in country music out of Nashville than he was in wrestling. But they started the girls' office and they started training the girls, and they could be controlled. Moolah wanted the percentage. She wanted to be booked as the champion with all of the promoters, and she wanted to send the girls out and be an attraction, third match on the card. She didn't give a shit about trying to be as big a star as Mildred Burke because it wasn't going to happen again. And that is what the promoters were comfortable with. So from the late 50s through the mid 80s, female wrestling became an attraction on the card in your town once or twice a year. As long as Moolah didn't have to put anybody over. But speaking of putting people over, Brian, would you like to put Ash over a little bit before we wind up?
No. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the movie. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the movie, and everyone involved in it seems to be really proud of it. So that's a good accomplishment there. And I guess, Ash, I think we may have to make this a multi-part thing, because just you and Jim talking about this stuff is something the listeners are going to want to hear more of. But just to follow up on my earlier question, the offices you dealt with after WWE's talent dropped out, did you deal with AEW? Did you deal with TNA?
Yeah, Tony Khan, although he hasn't responded to my text messages in the past while after the movie's been done.
It doesn't look like you're going to get booked then.
Yeah. But Tony was lovely when we were in a bind, and Tony Storm was, booked solid, and I had to deal with Tony Khan to get her availabilities and his approval for her to shoot the movie. He was great with that. Billy Corgan was great for Camille. And hopefully, Billy will be promoting through NWA. I actually I connected him. I didn't realize he was going to outright buy it in the blink of an eye, but I connected him with Mildred's granddaughter, which is how that belt got into NWA, which I'm so thrilled that Billy is honoring Mildred's legacy, and that he's helping reintroduce her to the world. So Billy was great. AEW was great. TNA was great because Trinity was in TNA at the time. And Trinity's been lovely. Honestly, everyone's been fucking awesome in the pro wrestling community, other than this like ambiguous, elusive WWE corridor of confusion. It's just like, what's up, guys? Lay it on me, Doc.
WWE treats filmmakers like AEW treats wrestlers.
Maybe they just want to see how many times they can come to you and offer to do business with you where you agree, and then they say, never mind.
Well, the thing to me is this. My day job is running a record label, and I was a DIY punk rock hardcore kid, and one of the things about that culture is that everything's based on like honor, ethics, and just being fucking real. And most people appreciate it. Some people will be like, Ash is a fucking dick. A lot of people will be like, I trust Ash. He tells me what he thinks. I just don't believe in sugarcoating and bullshitting around the fucking truth. I'm just such a believer of like, this is what's up. Just call me and say, yeah, Vince doesn't think your movie's going to do anything, and it's an indie film, and he doesn't want his wrestlers wasting time, and we fucked up submitting them to you before having the picture being approved by the powers that be. Okay, get it. Hey, we're not going to take your money because X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool. But like to just not say anything and to keep it ambiguous and just see what happens, like that's not good in anything. In business, in friendships, in romance, just fucking life's too short, man. Just say what's up, and just tell. A band turns in a song. I might hurt your feelings. I don't think it's great. Here's some ideas. Or this is your best song. Or maybe, focus on this one instead of that one. Here's what we think. But to just not be just forthright, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. And it obviously happens a lot in entertainment. But, just be real with fucking people. By the way, I got to tell you, because I know the Karate Kid of it all came up. One of the things about giving feedback, and I don't know that this was ever said, so I'm going to share it, but my dad told me about it. So when they were doing test screenings for Karate Kid, which if there was any page out of the movie business I would give to the music business, it's the audience test. It's fucking fantastic. And it's one of the things I've loved about doing the film festivals with Queen of the Ring and seeing certain moments that work better or worse in different places, and then tweaking the film for the final version, which will be seen in Louisville on the 25th of February. The audience test. So they were testing Karate Kid. The original ending of Karate Kid 1 was the beginning of 2, when they go out into the parking lot and they have the kerfluffle between the two coaches and they shatter the windows and that whole thing. That was the original ending. When they did a test screening in Burbank, my dad asked, hey, does anyone have any things that they wanted to see more or less of or anything in that regard? And a woman in the back raised her hand and said, hey, I really love the movie, but I wanted to see Miyagi and LaRusso together at the end. Because what they just saw was the thing in the parking lot. And he goes, you know what? You're right. That's the whole heart of the story. It's, people think, oh, it's a sports fighting movie. It's a karate movie. It's about a kid that didn't have a dad that finds a father figure in an Asian maintenance man at the rundown apartment building. That's why it's the two of them looking at each other on the poster. It's not him looking at Johnny Lawrence in the final fight. It's him looking at this father figure because there's no dad in his life. So he goes to Jerry Weintraub, the producer, and goes, hey, I need to do a pickup day of shooting and fix the ending. And Jerry doesn't want him to do it because, again, perception. He goes, oh, no, then everyone in town, everyone in Hollywood will think that the movie's a turkey and then it doesn't work, and now we're trying to fix it, and da-da-da-da-da. And my dad's like, I'll put up my own money. I just need a handful of background actors. I need LaRusso and Miyagi looking at each other, saying they did it. That's the magic we got to end on. And he was able to go get it shot in a day. And when you watch the movie now, you can't imagine it ending any other way. And that ending is what gives the audience that hit of dopamine or serotonin and goes, fuck, you feel it. And then bam, the credits roll. And that was because of an audience test, because of some fan in the back row in Burbank raising their hand and giving their feedback. And had that not happened, who knows if the movie would have been anywhere nearly as successful as it was, because the ending is what, the last thing people feel when they go to see it. So I know you didn't ask for that, but I just thought I could share it to give a little nugget of like, hey, the audience test is great. And I'm sure there's, the fun thing about pro wrestling is that the audience test is done live every night. And that's part of the things that I was explaining to the actors when we were making the movie. I go, you have to understand when pro wrestling is happening, it's live theater. And while the writers and the executives may want the audience to root for this person and not root for this person, they can't control it once the toothpaste is out of the tube and the wrestling and the dialogue and the drama is happening, in the ring and on the microphone. And that's something that I've found, as I call them civilians, people that don't watch pro wrestling, when the civilians start going into the world, they go, wow, now I see the theater of it all. This is real. It's live theater mixed with stunts. And I'm like, that's why we love it, because it's emotions, Yeah.
Oh no, sorry.
Anyway, that's my TED talk. Thanks for listening.
Jump in before he did. Hey, Ash, if I could ask one last question. We brought up Martin Kove earlier. What's it like for you to work with someone who worked with your father?
Great question. And Marty, as of today, is the only person that's worked with both of us. He was lovely. I'm good friends with his manager in a small world. And there wasn't some big master plan of casting him. I was just like, I needed someone for Al Haft. I knew he didn't live too far from Louisville. He had moved to Nashville, and I was good friends with his manager. And I was like, dude, what's Marty doing? This would be fun. And then I had met him once before at his manager's office, and we had a cigar together, and he was just such a lovely guy that, and he was so warm and welcoming and had some great stories to tell, that I was just like, man, I really love hanging out with him. He's just a great person. So let me see if he would, star in the movie. And he was great. And it, the whole thing's surreal just because he not ever being a part of my father's life when all of, the peak of his career was happening, and just knowing who he was and having the last name, but just never having any connection whatsoever because he wasn't interested in being involved. Kid born out of wedlock, not a good relationship with my mom, all that stuff. And everyone who knew my dad in that era of my life, it's like hard to fully describe what the it's hard to describe that mystique and dynamic of me talking to them about that. But I guess I'm trying to figure out how to verbalize this. The way that I could communicate with Marty about that time in my life and my dad's, and just hear stories and hear him, make, not comparisons, but like, I don't know, man. I'm not doing the moment justice and trying to verbalize this. It's obviously a very emotional topic, but Marty was just so lovely as someone in that unique scenario of knowing me, and then obviously working, on a deep level with my dad, that I just found myself really grateful for his energy and his just like the humanity in Marty. Marty is there's a lack of humanity to a lot of parts of Hollywood, and even to the city of Los Angeles. There's a lot of just narcissism and opportunistic behavior, and very cutthroat and very Johnny-come-lately. And there's a lot of that in Hollywood, as all the books tell you. But Marty has such humanity in him that I found myself just wanting to hang out with him as a friend. And he's a great hang. You go out to dinner with him. Jim, you experienced it. Just hang out with him. Certain people just have that welcoming, endearing spirit where you're like, I'm just in a good mood every time I'm around this person. And Marty has that gift. And I just found myself going, I want to hang out with this guy. I'm putting him in the movie. He's great. And then the rest is history.
Well, and that's a good place to wrap up and remind everybody again February 25th, it's going to be history. The world premiere of The Queen of the Ring at AMC Stony Brook here in Louisville, the 26th of February in Chicago, 27th in Nashville, the 4th and 5th of March. It hits New York City and Los Angeles, and the 7th opens everywhere at a theater near you. Queen of the Ring, starring me and a few other people, directed and written by Ash Avildsen. And Ash, thank you for doing this. And you know, we think it's going to be something that all of the fans and all of the listeners are going to get a kick out of seeing.
I appreciate that, guys. And for all the listeners, sorry if I talk too much. I was born a rambling man. Hopefully I didn't ramble on for too much.
You were vaccinated with a phonograph needle.
I've been called worse. Well, thank you guys for having me. And hopefully I see you sooner than later in the flesh.
Well, there you go, folks. There was the rest of our talk with Ash Avildsen about the upcoming movie Queen of the Ring. And of course, as we talked about, the premiere is here in Louisville, Kentucky, February 25th. I believe then they're doing Chicago the 26th, Nashville the 27th, New York and LA March 4th and 5th, and then coming to a screen near you, including a few drive-ins, hopefully, so we can get the horny teenage crowd. On March the 7th is the wider release, but
yeah, I don't know if that's the crowd you want for the Billy Wolf Mildred Burke story.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what. One thing I noticed about the period pieces is people back in those days, they had more marks on their face, more of that razor burn. Brian, you know, because they had to be shaved with a straight razor by an Italian that was singing opera back in the 30s. You know that was a common problem across America.
That's a common maybe stereotype. I don't think that's a rare thing. There aren't opera singing barbers all throughout the country.
Well, goddamn it, that's the only thing I liked about Connecticut when I lived there was I could go down to that barber shop and the guys that cut my hair were the 3 Italian guys that sang opera.
They sang? They sang while cutting?
Yes, they sang while they were
I can't tell if you're working or tell the truth right now.
That's one of the 2 things that I liked about Connecticut was the place I got my hair cut, where with the 3 old Italian guys, you lined up in the 3 chairs there in this old shop, and they sang opera and cut your hair with the scissors the way God intended it. And the second thing was the little market down the street from me. It had the best tasting ground beef for burgers in the world. But I digress.
I can't believe you would like that. I would think that would bother you, that they would somehow slip up because they're so into their song that may cut your ear or something.
No, it was one of the best haircuts I ever got. And they were they had experience. I felt confident in their hands because they had experience. They'd done this a million times. It's kind of like the people at Harry's. Because that's where I was going with that, is back in the old days, in the 30s and 40s, when Mildred Burke and Billy Wolf and those people were around. Well, I guess Mildred didn't get her face shaved a lot, but, you know, back then, because of possible accidents, the girls had to do some grooming, even though it didn't become fashionable until apparently some magazines I've seen in the late 80s. But nevertheless, you don't need to find the Italian guys singing opera with a straight razor at your throat to now get a close shave here in the modern world, in the 21st century, in the 2nd millennium, or are we working on the 3rd millennium? Now, if I just get with the program, people, our friends at harrys.com, HARRYS.com, that's where you go now if you want a slick face. I mean, it'll be slicker than whale shit in an ice flow. It'll be slicker than cum on a gold tooth. And you will not be bleeding. And you won't get dreaded skin diseases, and you won't shave off tops of your epidermises with these horrible nicked up straight razors that carried disease and bubonic plague. That's, you know, straight razors were what spread the Spanish flu, just so you know, in 1918. And right now, folks, Harry's is making shaving products that will make your life so much easier. The deodorant, the lotion, the body wash, the hair gel, all of the ancillary products to make you somehow publicly acceptable for regular polite society's consumption. You'll smell better. You'll look better. You may even taste better if the opportunity presents itself. But the main thing is Harry's Shave, the German-engineered blades, made in their own factory, a proprietary secret by an ancient metalsmith, and the 5-blade razor. That's right, 5 of them up there. They're gonna whack that whisker off right at the surface 5 different ways. And it goes on a weighted, ergonomically designed handle, comes with foaming shave gel and a travel cover, so you do not slice your fingers off. All this, the trial set, normally $13, you're going to get it for $3 at harrys.com/JCE. And when you go in the store and you try to buy one of these packages of razor cartridges, if you do what sometimes many people do and just stick 3 or 4 in your pocket and absentmindedly forget about it, then when you're trying to go out the door, you're going to set off alarms, you're going to be electrocuted, and your body is going to be taken away and buried in Potter's Field. Because these things are expensive, but not at Harry's. And plus, you don't have to stick it in your pocket and sneak out the door. They're going to mail it to you for $3. No sense risking a shoplifting charge for $3. $13 trial set, only $3, harrys.com/JCE. Get a close shave and don't have a close shave with the law. Stay out of jail. Brian, you know, you haven't been to jail since you started shaving with Harry's.
I have not been to jail. And
it can't be a coincidence.
Harry's is a fine product. We, of course, encourage everyone who needs a good shave. Get that shave with Harry's. One more time, what's that promo code?
harrys.com/JCE.
There it is.
That's it. It's over there now.
That was that.